This is a second video about the stream cipher that uses twin cellular automata. In the first video, I show the stream of random bits generated so you can get a sense of the quality of a random version of this system. And in this one, I want to explain the system a little bit better. So there's two automata. One is, you could call it the state automaton. The other is the tap automaton. And this is inspired by linear feedback shift registers. Instead of the states and the taps being kind of integrated in one system, we have an automaton for each of them. And each of the automata have their own rules. In this case, it's a 256-bit rule, and you have a neighborhood of size 8. So what you have here is all that I need to keep in memory except for the rules, which I didn't display. So this would be the current row of the state automaton. This is the current row of the taps automaton. And this vector here, this is the logical AND of S and T, just updated in real time. Now finally, to get the bit, you really just need to sum up the number of ones, count how many bits are switched on, and then the parity, the evenness or oddness of the number of ones, that determines the random bit that gets output. So when you advance so what you'll do is advance each automaton by 64 time steps. And that allows all the information in the current state vector, for instance, to be mixed together, because there's something like a cone of influence with cellular automata that depends on their neighborhood. So if I were to only advance this one step, then the next bit that would go down here in the second row, it would only be a function of 8 of these. But if I just keep advancing that cellular automaton long enough, then every bit in the updated vector will be a function of all the bits in the pre-update vector. So I just chose 64 because you're calculating basically a square of bits. You know, we have 64-bit vectors. Just do 64 updates on the state automaton, 64 updates on the taps automaton. And then you're going to take the row at the bottom, and that's what this would be. This is the row at the bottom after 64 updates. So is this. Calculate the logical AND, and then just take the parity of the bits that are switched on. So that logical AND is to capture the notion of taps. Right? It's imitating a linear feedback shift register in that regard. The difference is, instead of fixed taps, and that's usually how it is with a particular LFSR, you have a fixed set of taps over and over again. You're going to sample some of the bits of your state, take the sum mod 2 of the bits that are tapped, and that will be the bit that you will enter into the state. And then there's one bit on the side that will sort of fall off and be your output bit. So those are nice because you only have to store a tap vector, which is fixed and static, and a state vector. So you're talking about for instance, two 64-bit unsigned integers. This system is definitely more complex, but I think it's still relatively lean. So I just have to keep 512 bits of the key in memory, and then these two vectors, and that's it. Now this is just shown as a sort of byproduct, just so you can kind of see how B is generated. So as you can see, pretty much every time different bits in the state vector are tapped. And of course the state vector, it's evolving in a way that's more complicated. It's not simply one novel bit here and everything else shifted to the left. It's on average half the bits of the state vector will change and half the bits in the tap vector will change. So this should be a very complex thing to try to analyze if you don't have the key available. There are some tweaks that wouldn't make it any heavier in terms of the key, but it would slow it down a little bit computationally, not much. You could rotate each key after every 64 bits or whatever. You could circular shift the key, and you could even do that circular shift as a function of the last bit that was output. You could maybe use 0 to shift the state automaton rule, and 1 would tell you to shift the taps automaton rule. And there's other more complicated things you could do. You could use other features of this logical and sort of intermediate product to modify the secret key. But probably this is pretty secure as is. And if anybody that is more of an expert in this field stumbles upon this video, I would be curious to hear if there's any security vulnerabilities that I'm overlooking. I mean, the idea here is to get a one-time pad at a bargain price. Of course, it can't be a one-time pad because we have a key with finite information, and it's going to give us this arbitrarily long key stream. But the mechanics of the crypto system are very primitive. Just b equals 1 means flip that bit of the plain text, and b equals 0 means let that bit pass through. And on the other side, they have access to the key stream as well, so they know which bits to flip back into the correct value and which to just leave alone because they're already correct. So there are some beautiful properties to stream ciphers. It's a high-speed flowing idea, and then the simplicity that you really are just concentrated on generating a pattern of bits that's hard to analyze. So cellular automata, they're hard to invert. There's very, very many of them. You can choose all of these basically Boolean functions that are applied in this weird cyclical way. So even though you can't invert them, I think they're great for this kind of application if you're trying to generate fake complexity.